So, it's the Nerdy Virgin podcast. That's what this is. That's what's happening right now. And I'm recording this on my phone as I walk around the neighborhood at night in an effort to get some exercise. I have expensive equipment that I purchased that I should be using to record this podcast, but I feel better if I'm walking while talking. The sitting down and podcasting, I gotta get used to that. I like doing something else while I'm podcasting. Like, you know what, that I genuinely, not that he ever would, but if Batman wanted to start a podcast, he could podcast while fighting crime. He's that good. I have a lot of Batman on the brain because I've been playing Arkham City, Batman Arkham City. I think the second one in the Arkham Asylum game quintrilogy. How many have been made? I don't know. It's the second one. It's the one where Joker's sick and Batman has to race for the cure because Joker infects Batman. And I'll tell you, that part of the plot line is really not helping me. I don't like playing a character who's on a clock with health issues. That weirds me out. But I got to push past it. You know, I got to do what Batman would do. And to quote from one of the cartoons, I got to work through the pain. And for me, the pain is getting carpal tunnel, hitting the mouse button as I attempt to clumsily punch my way through the game. Now, the substance of this podcast, I wanted to talk about Dune. A lot of people are talking about Dune. The people that I've talked to about Dune specifically, universally have not really enjoyed the film. They found it to be long and plodding. And that's what happens when you adroitly adapt a book that is in and of itself long and plodding. I don't think there's a way to make Dune into a movie that's fast-paced, high-octane, non-stop action. I mean, there is. It's called Star Wars. It's been done. Because the core, in terms of the plot, is basically a young boy, or a young man, I should say, finds his destiny and avenges it. You know, it's the Lion King. It's pretty much the Lion King. Maybe Dune should be a musical. Maybe that's what they should do. A Dune musical. I gotta see that. How would that go? There's sand, and over there is also sand. And if you look over there to your right, you know what's there? More sand. It's very sandy here on the planet Dune. Hey! Like, if it's a... that would be... that's what you got to do to make this work, is that it can't be... The music can't evoke the emotion of the actual book. It has to be the opposite. It has to be as if you got the composers who wrote, like, the happiest upbeat songs. Like, if they could get the guys who did Oklahoma, difficult to do because they're dead, but people who could do it in that style. Dune's a place where there's lots and lots of dunes. I think that might, then it might be a bit peppier. Maybe that's the solution. Dune the musical, I may have to make that happen. I just walked by this car and the lights flashed for a second as if to say, don't you try anything. Don't you try anything. I see what you're doing there. You think you can podcast without me noticing? How do I explain the plot of Dune? Well, it takes place in the year 10,000 something. So it's way, way off in the future. And human beings are on all these different planets, which this continues the trope, by the way, of every planet seems to have just one kind of weather pattern or one kind of climate. Star Wars did the same thing. There's the desert planet, that's Dune. Caladan is the kind of forest and the water and forest. And then Giedi Prime is black tar. It's a planet of black tar, so that you know that it's the evil planet. So, and there's a lot of politics going on. There are all these great houses. The emperor feels threatened. Actually, the whole book is based on neuroses, if you think about it. The emperor feels threatened, so he tells the Harkonnens, I'm going to take this planet that's the most important planet in the universe and give it to House Atreides. And then we're going to secretly go in and kill them. And no one will know, even though it's kind of fairly obvious that me arbitrarily taking this planet away from the Harkonnens and giving it to the Atreides, pretty obvious what my plan is. But no one will know overtly. Because if they know overtly, then we'll be plunged into civil war, even though I'm kind of forcing us to go into civil war. So that's the short version. That's the Wikipedia version of it. And the main character is Paul Atreides, who, as it happens, his mother is a Bene Gesserit nun. The Bene Gesserits are an order of nuns. This is the first half of the movie. Was basically they just have to find a really creative way of explaining what everything is. I think that's why people thought it was so slow. Like, once you know, basically the whole first movie was, okay, here's the setup. And now that you understand all of this, we can get to the plot. What's the plot? Boy gets to a desert planet, realizes he has a destiny. Bad guys kill his father. He goes into the desert, realizes even more he has a destiny. He sees a worm, meets a girl. The girl's tribe at first wants to kill him, but then he proves himself by killing somebody else. It's really any love story if you think about it. Now, there are thematic elements in the novel that, to a degree, got carried over in the movie. Because it's a commentary on ecology and what happens when everybody is lusting over a substance and how that affects the people who live near where that substance is mined. And it's making a statement about how, large corporations and large businesses basically go in and can, if they're not careful or if they don't care, destroy the cultures that exist and that happen to be near these precious resources. This is a huge movie that was financed by a corporation that hopefully is not one of those corporations, but we don't know. I can't say one way or another if the corporation is good or evil. But maybe that's the point. It's a gray area. So maybe the question I should be asking myself is, what did the author of Dune want me to take away from it? Probably that we need to conserve the earth and stop destroying it, and that we need to protect and respect each other's cultures, and probably let's throw in respect the earth. Did I say that already? Well, if I did, it deserves to be said twice. That's my takeaway from it. So what have I done as somebody who's read this book? How have I changed? What am I trying to do to make the world a better place? I mean, well, I live very near to where I work now, so I'm saving on gas, but that has more to do with the fact that I'm lazy than it does that I care. But, you know, it happens to help, so that can count for something. I never wash my clothes, and I wear them until they die. I don't do a lot of laundry, so I'm saving water. See, that's how I'm making the world a better place. My laziness, thanks to my laziness, thanks to the fact that I'm a failure, and that I didn't build a giant corporation that is destroying the earth. Thanks to my incompetence has saved more trees than any rally or fundraiser. It's what I didn't do. I should be thanked for that. So there's the scene early in the movie where Paul Atreides, played by Timothée Chalamet, is tested by an elderly Bene Gesserit nun, and she says, "You got to put your hand in the box, and you're going to feel pain. And if you take your hand out of the box, then I'm going to stab you with this needle." And so he's, fighting his animal instincts, and this is where, his mother out in the hallway is saying the phrase from the book, "I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the mind killer." And he channels that and is able to overcome his fear of this woman putting intense pain on his hand. And it's a very tense, oddly quiet, dramatic moment that I don't know. You'd think there'd be better ways to test. What were they? I think they were trying to test if he was the one by putting him in a life or death situation. And I don't know. You'd think 10,000 years in the future, they'd come up with a blood test. I mean, at least we're not. I guess we're primitive compared to the characters in this, but I mean, when we're testing for coronavirus, it's just a nasal swab. You think they could do something a little bit less invasive? And actually, if part of it is he has this ability to see into the future, and he's the product. They've been trying to breed this, perfect leader who will lead the universe into like a higher level of being. And they've been doing it through selective breeding, and they think he might be the one. And they're the ones who they go into primitive cultures. The nuns, see, this is the whole problem with the movie right here, is that I feel like I have to keep explaining how and why things work, and that's why people were like, this is so slow in plotting. Like it's almost like you have to go to a school to learn about the world of Dune before you can watch Dune. And if you don't get all that information, then it's just a bunch of people staring at each other angrily for 2 hours. Let me rephrase, closer to 3 hours. Like the whole idea of this podcast, I wanted to just explain the plot of Dune really quickly and then get to my commentary, but I can't even get past explaining the damn thing. All right, so they go to the planet, and they're worried that the Harkonnens are going to try to sabotage them, and then they discover that the Harkonnens are trying to sabotage them, and then they're attacked by the Harkonnens, and they lose the attack against the Harkonnens. So they were right. They knew they were walking into the trap. I think in the book at one point, one of them says to the kid's father, this is a trap, and he's like, yeah, I know, but the only way to get out of the trap is to spring the trap, and then my response is, or avoid the trap, or avoid the trap. But there was no way they could avoid the trap, because if he said no to the Emperor, then the Emperor would give him an excuse to just, attack him anyway. So it was it was a no-win situation, I think. So they come in, and it turns out that the palace physician is actually working for the other side, because he thinks that the other side has his wife, and the father ends up getting killed with most of the Atreides people, and Paul just ends up with his mother wandering the desert, and there was a moment where they're escaping these guards, and he's using this powerful voice. And right after they finish it, she gives him a note on the voice, and she says, it was a little too high pitched. And that was a Jewish mother moment. I enjoyed that moment, actually. I've thought of this because when I was a kid, I remember I would watch movies with my grandmother, the archetypal Jewish grandmother. And we watched science fiction movies. I remember we watched RoboCop and we watched Star Trek 3. Not in the same sitting, that would be a bit much. RoboCop was a difficult one for me to watch with my Jewish grandmother. That's not one you watch with your grandmother. We didn't know. And then we watched it, and it was very awkward. But Star Trek 3 was good. But I think if you want to watch Dune, and you're not a huge fan of Dune, and you're concerned about the slowness of the movie, get a Jewish grandmother and watch it with her, and allow her to talk all the way through it. And now it's going to become a whole different experience. Dare I say, performance art of the Jewish grandmother going, how long are they going to be in the desert? The whole planet's the desert? Ay, what is this, Joseph? Let's watch Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. That's in a desert, but it's got songs. They dance. If you watch Dune and then you watch The English Patient, you'll say to yourself, "Oh, thank you. This English Patient is such a relief. It's so fast-paced. It's almost too fast. Slow down, English Patient." Timothy Chalamet at one point is fighting a guy, and what impressed me is that he was able to beat the guy in a knife fight, and yet his bangs were covering 90% of his eyesight. Like, not only can he defeat somebody in a knife fight, he can do it, A, without being able to see them because of the bangs, and B, because of the way the bangs are, he does it while looking smoldering and quietly sexy. Which is very impressive. It's very difficult to win a battle or to win a knife fight, let alone win it while looking good at the same time. And I'm not sure if that's part of Paul Atreides' power. I don't recall reading that in the book. He has the power to see the future and to look fantastic while fighting. But nevertheless, that's the direction they wanted to go in the film. And this is actually part 1 of the book. They don't do the whole book in one shot. And the director felt that you can't do it, and you have to do it in 2 parts. And many people in the audience would say, you could do this in one. You could cut this down to an hour. Or you could. My other idea was that every 15 minutes they should just put in clips of Jerry Seinfeld doing stand-up about Dune to just kind of break it up a little bit, give us a little bit of some comic relief. There's no humor in the book. The closest thing there is to humor is at some point, I think somebody is bitterly sarcastic to somebody else, but it's really not. It's not laugh out loud humor, and that's a challenge. That's a definite challenge to have no humor. They managed to shoehorn in the movie. This movie has one joke in 2.5 hours. There is one moment, a moment of levity between Jason Momoa and Timothy Chalamet, where Jason Momoa says, "Oh, it looks like you've gained some muscle," and Timothy Chalamet says, "Really?" And then he says, "No." And that was it. That was the moment. That was the comedy of the piece. And it was nice. It was a nice moment. I wish. The other thing that was weird about this version of Dune, by the way, was that there were contemporary phrases that got in, and I don't know if that was a conscious decision, but I feel like back in the day, if I wanted to check on and see how somebody was doing, and I would walk up to them and say, "Are you all right?" But now, in 2021, I feel like I walk up to somebody and I would say, "Are you good? Everything good? You good?" It feels very contemporary. So there was a moment where they're speaking in this, kind of heightened, almost Shakespearean kind of dialogue. The sleeper has awakened. We must obscure our tracks. We must vary the rhythm of our tracks so as not to disturb the worm. And then he turns to his mother and he's like, "Are you good?" And she says, "Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I could eat, but I'm all right." It suddenly got very a tad contemporary out of nowhere. I also find it very strange that Oscar Isaac was cast as Paul's father, because wasn't Oscar Isaac just a 20-year-old in the Star Wars movies? Or, maybe a 29-year-old, and now suddenly he looks like he's 50? It's been 2 years. What happened? Like, I'm 39. Does that mean I can be cast as Gandalf? And not even a young Gandalf? Is this what people... Am I old? I think I'm old now. I think that's what that means. Did I enjoy the movie? That's a good question. Thanks for asking. I did. I stuck with it. I have a soft spot for science fiction, so I went with it. The irony is that because I've read the book and I've seen the David Lynch version, I already knew what was going to happen. I just didn't know how this version was going to tackle it. So there wasn't a lot of suspense. And that's the one thing people always, not people, but always that sense of, well, the book was better. That's what people say. And that's why I almost don't like reading the book before I see the movie, because every time I read the book and then I see the movie, I don't think it's fair to the movie. I already know what's going to happen. So the movie is just, all right, I'm watching how somebody else is interpreting how it's going to happen. If I hadn't read the book, and I never read Ready Player One, I saw the movie. I loved the movie. Everyone who read the book and saw the movie complaining. Oh, no, it's totally, it's this, it's that. I would almost rather, if I go the other way, where I see the movie and then read the book, I feel like I have less of a problem being disappointed. The book, if anything, just kind of almost, usually I'll like the book, but it also enhances the movie, because then I go back and go, that's where they got that idea from. That's what happened with 2001: A Space Odyssey. I saw the movie and then I read the book. And the book was like, oh, that's just telling me what happened in the movie. So it's difficult for me to even assess Dune, because I don't feel like I'm coming at it with a fresh pair of eyes. I will say that they really, the characters in this story, in this version of it, there's a lot of rooms that are huge with no decoration, a lot of huge empty rooms going on. Is this the cathedral? That's the linen closet. There's just one towel in here. Do we need this room? It's a big room. Big rooms. But that's what makes it dramatic. I mean, you can't tell the story of Dune and they live in, a condo. A condo in the sand. There's no drama in that at all. Well, I've now completed my walk. I'm back in my apartment, staring at the microphone I paid a lot of money to use for this podcast, sighing as I realize I'm now going to deliver a podcast that was recorded on a phone. So there's going to be a lot of popping. I also should point out that I'm wearing underwear that doesn't fit. It's too big, and it has now fallen below my waistline. And I feel very exposed. I'm not saying that because I'm bragging. I'm saying that because I feel a lot of shame. So it's how I like to end the podcast, by just diving into the shame.